Chapter 23, When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. Afterwards, Anna was very ashamed of her outburst. After all, she had known all the time that Mamma and Papa had no choice but to send her away. And Max. All she had done was to make everyone feel worse about something that had to happen anyway. Why couldn't she have kept quiet? She worried about it in bed, and when she woke up early the next morning, she felt she must do something. She still had some of her prize money left. She'd go out and buy croissants for everybody's breakfast. There was a little breeze blowing for the first time in weeks, and when she came back from the baker's with a hot croissant in a bag, she suddenly felt much happier. It would all work out somehow. Everything would be all right. A man was talking to the concierge in a strong German accent, and as she passed, Anna heard him asking for Papa. "I'll take you up," she said, disregarding the concierge, and the concierge, in offended silence, handed her a letter. Anna looked down at it and saw with a sudden quickening of the pulse that it had an English stamp. All the way up in the lift, she could think of nothing but what might be inside the letter, and she only remembered Papa's visitor when he spoke to her. "You must be Anna," he said, and she nodded. He was a shabby-looking man with a sad voice. "Papa," cried Anna as they entered the flat, "I've brought some croissants for breakfast, and there's a letter and someone to see you." "Someone here, now?" said Papa as he emerged from his room, tying his tie. He drew the visitor into the dining room, and Anna followed with a letter in her hand. "How do you do, Herr Rosenfeld?" said the man with a little bow. "I used to be an actor in Berlin, but you don't know me. Only small parts, you understand." He smiled, showing irregular yellow teeth, and added with apparent irrelevance, "I have a nephew in the confectionery business." "Papa," said Anna, holding out the letter, but Papa said, "Later." Herr Rosenfeld seemed to find it difficult to say what he'd come for. His sad eyes kept roaming around the dining room while he considered one opening after another and dismissed each one. Last he put his hand in his pocket and pulled out a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. "I've brought you this," he said, and handed it to Papa. Papa unwrapped it. It was a watch, an old silver watch, but there was something familiar about it. "Julius," cried Papa. Herr Rosenfeld nodded sadly. "I'm the bearer of bad news." Uncle Julius was dead. While Mamma gave Herr Rosenfeld some coffee and he absent-mindedly nibbled one of Anna's croissants, he told them how Uncle Julius had died. He'd been dismissed from his post as curator of the Berlin Natural History Museum nearly a year ago. "Surely you knew," said Herr Rosenfeld. "He had a Jewish grandmother." Uncle Julius had not been able to work as a naturalist after this, but had found a job sweeping up in a factory. He'd moved from his flat into a cheap room, and this was where he'd made friends with Herr Rosenfeld, who had the room next door. In spite of his difficulties, Uncle Julius had been quite cheerful at this stage. "He just accepted things, didn't he?" said Herr Rosenfeld. "I was planning even then to come to Paris and join my nephew, and I said to him, 'You come too, there's room for us both in the confectionery trade.' But he wouldn't. He seemed to think that the situation in Germany was bound to change." Papa nodded, remembering something Uncle Julius said in Switzerland. Herr Rosenfeld and Uncle Julius had had many conversations together, and Uncle Julius had talked a great deal about Papa and his family. Once or twice, Herr Rosenfeld had accompanied him to the zoo, where he now spent all his Sundays. Though Uncle Julius had so little money, he always managed to bring some peanuts for the monkeys and scraps for the other animals, and Herr Rosenfeld had been amazed to see how they rushed to the bars of their cages as soon as he appeared. It wasn't just the food, he said, it was more like a sort of gentleness in him that they recognised. Again Papa nodded. During the autumn, Uncle Julius had even dropped into the zoo after work in the evenings. His whole life now centred around the animals. There was a monkey that let him stroke it through the bars of its cage. And then just before Christmas, the blow had fallen. Uncle Julius had received an official letter revoking his pass to the zoo. No reason was given. The fact that he had a Jewish grandmother was enough. After this, Uncle Julius had changed. He couldn't sleep and he couldn't eat properly. He no longer talked to Herr Rosenfeld, but spent Sundays in his room staring at the sparrows on the rooftop opposite. At last, late one night in spring, he'd knocked on Herr Rosenfeld's door and begged him, when he went to Paris, to take something to Papa. Herr Rosenfeld had explained that he wouldn't be going for some time yet, but Uncle Julius had said, "Never mind, I'll give it to you now." And Herr Rosenfeld had accepted the small parcel to calm him. Next morning, Uncle Julius had been found dead, an empty bottle of sleeping tablets beside him. Herr Rosenfeld had not been able to leave Germany till several months later, but had at once come to see Papa and deliver the parcel. "There's a note as well," he said. The handwriting was as meticulous as ever. It said simply, "Goodbye, I wish you well," and was signed Julius. For quite a long time after Herr Rosenfeld had left, Anna forgot about the other letter from England, which she was still holding in her hand, but at last she remembered and gave it to Papa. He opened it, read it silently, and passed it to Mamma. "They want to buy your film script," cried Mamma, and then, as though she could hardly believe it, £1,000! "Does that mean we don't have to go and stay with Mamma?" Max asked quickly. "Of course," said Mamma. "There's no need now for you to go away. We can all go to England together." "Oh, Papa," cried Anna. "Papa, isn't it wonderful?" "Yes," said Papa. "I'm glad we shall all be together." To think that they're going to film your script. Mamma's hand was on his shoulder. Then she noticed the frayed collar under her fingers. You'll need a new jacket, she said. Let's tell the concierge and give her notice, said Max. No, wait, cried Mamma. But if we're going to London, we ought to let your schools know, and we must find out about hotels. It'll be colder there. You'll need some woolies. Suddenly there seemed to be 1,000 things to talk about. But Papa, who'd made it all happen, didn't want to talk about any of them. While Mamma and the children chattered and made plans, he sat quite still and let the words flow around him. Uncle Julius's watch was in his hand, and he was stroking it very gently with one finger. End of chapter 23.